All right, so welcome to this London Calling virtual session and to Tips to Architect a Future-Proof Salesforce org. My name is Pedro Molina. I'm a Salesforce MVP. I'm currently working as an application developer at Designit. And well, in case you want to contact me, you can do it through my Twitter account, or you can go to my personal blog where I talk about Salesforce. I think I have spent the half of my working life in support teams, not only with Salesforce, but also with different technologies. In every different company and with every single technology, I have faced, well, not the same issues, but issues produced by the same common architecture pitfalls. Those are just some, like can be, for example, an unexpected customer data growth. Maybe you were in a rush when you were creating the application. Your technology get obsolete. You or your team had a lack of platform knowledge. Maybe you don't know all your customer business processes, or I don't know, you tend to think that your processes will be the only one running at a time in your customer environment, or maybe you just had a bad plan because you didn't spend the necessary time while architecting your application. And what I want to share is 5 ideas that from my point of view are most probably the most important, not only the only ones, but probably the most important, that you have to keep in mind to try to do not face those common issues. So think in the future, understand your platform, think that you're working a multi-package org, so you're not going to be the only one creating processes or code in your environment. Know your customer, not only your customer processes, but also how they work or why they need this or those. And also maintain your application. Maintenance is quite important. So what I'm gonna do is explain the five issues I faced and I fixed, and I'm gonna sort these issues by disaster level. So the first one is gonna be a bad dimensioned user interface. From my view, is the easiest to solve because it will take you less time to find the fix. So let's start. Okay. What we can see here is something that from my view is not an interface what you can easily work with. But actually, what I'm going to show you is what the customer reported to us. And indeed, what I'm going to do in all the issues is to explain you what the customer reported to us, how we fix it, and how it has been, sorry about it, and how it has been done in the very beginning at the project time or in an earlier time in the project. So what customer reported to us is this error message. This was easy to find out and easy to fix, and it's produced actually because some Visualforce components, those that are iterable, cannot hold lists with over 1,000 of records. The fix here was quite easy. It was just to replace a list by a map. And this, from a view, is a lack of knowledge of the platform. But again, from a view, this is not the only issue the real issue here. The real issue is this. We go back to our example. If Chrome want to, okay, and we change this list by a map, we can find the following. This is not a real solution. The proper solution here would be well, of course, change this for aligning, or if the customer want to keep this visual force, maybe because they don't want to pay a transition project or whatever, because they have their reasons, try to implement a pagination, okay? Pagination to hold maybe 20, 30 records, something that a final user can work with, not these 100 or whatever records, just to reach this button at the bottom. Okay, the next issue I want to talk about is dynamic SOQL queries. In this case, what the customer reported to us is the error message you can see in there, a duplicate field selected. When I saw that, the first thing that I thought that is someone had a bad copy paste and paste twice the same field name. Actually, I went to the developer console and I ran this query, and I checked that the error message was the same faced by the customer. All right, let's have a look at the code. And then I found this. This is still a dynamic query, but it's a bit more complex. We are using getDescribe to retrieve all the object fields, and then we're concatenating here all those fields into a string and creating this dynamic query. But so if we are retrieving all the fields in this way, why we're facing the error message I saw before? I tried to reproduce it. Actually, I could reproduce this, but what I found out was the following. This object type has two fields with the same name, but one was inside of a package and the other one was not, was just a custom field. So I reproduced it. I reproduced this again. I went to a developer or I created a package, I created a code like this within the package and I ran it. And then I was facing the same error message. This is because, well, this is just a guess, it's most probably the real thing, because you won't be able to see that in a debug log. But what Salesforce is most probably doing here is adding the package prefix to every single custom field. And so you are having two fields with the same name and you are facing this error message. Fortunately, I had access to the package and I modified the query to be able to run. So I get rid of this and I just have a look at the code, check the fields that the code was really needed, and I create a select for the retrieving just of those fields. From a view, this was not the only problem, because the getDescribe has its own limits, and so it's all adding more complexity to this code. Maybe you can think that having this is going to be easier in the future because you're just retrieving everything. You don't care about what you need, and you're working with all your fields. But again, this is a mistake. It can make you reach limits, server limits, and it can make you face error like this one. Okay, bad designed data model. This is starting to get a bit more interesting. In this case, what the customer reported to us was an error like the one you can see on the right side of your screen. System query extension, no selected query, blah, 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 200,000 rows. Okay, when I saw that, I went into the code and I checked the following. We were performing a query against an object, a quite big object, actually, and the only thing we had in the where clausule was where type is equal to project. And this was to retrieve or actually to calculate the last one. What the code was actually doing was retrieving all those records, all those in the sample, of course, just to find out the last one for the code prefix P19, that was project plus the year, 2019 in this case, to find out the code number and to calculate the new one and insert then a new row in this table. Okay, if you are having a table with 20, 30 records, this is not a problem. But if your customer data grow, it's gonna be a problem like this one. And it's because when retrieving in a table with 200,000 or over 200,000 rows, we're retrieving over the 10% of the data of the table, Salesforce is performing a table scan instead of performing just this query. This is because your query is not selective enough. The first thing that we tried to fix this, because was quite urgent for our customer, as it was preventing the customer to bill their customers, was to try to index this field. But this was not enough. Salesforce was keep trying to perform the table scan. Then, and thanks God, the customer did not agree with this possible solution. What we think was to create junk records in this table, and so make the table that big that the number of records retrieved by our select will be less than 10% of the table. But as I said before, the customer said yes, no. What we finally did is to perform an analysis of the table, provide to the customer with a list of records that could be deleted because it was maybe not with all the values, or maybe were from 2015, something like this, and delete those records. So the table fell down to the less to 200,000 rows, and the query worked. And this also gave time to apply a real solution. So what we did was create a new and smaller table that holds only the last record for each code prefix project, create a couple of triggers, one for the inserting of this new record in the original table, and one for updating this new table with a new record. In this way, we were turning this issue in a future-proof application, or at least we were fixing this part of the application. The next thing is the order of execution. And this is a basic, but also is something that you have to bear always in mind. And we used to forget it, or at least it used to happen to many people. Hey, it happened also to me. I have to recognize it. What customer requested at us this time was to have or to perform a small change in the code. Yes, I don't really remember remember right now, but I think it was to modify an if. We create this modification, we deploy the changes into a Scratch org, and then we deploy the changes into a sandbox. And when we deployed the changes into the sandbox, we realized that we realized that we were having Apex CPU time limits exception. Why? The change was so small. We start to review the code, and we perform some small modification for the improvement of the performance of our code. But we knew that this wasn't going to be enough, and actually it wasn't. We're still facing the Apex CPU time limit. So we decided to dig a bit more in the issue. We went to the developer console, we run debug logs, and well, in case you don't know how to show up this way of displaying the debug logs, I will say that if you double click into a debug log in the developer console, and you go to the back switch perspective and analysis, you will see the things like the log like this, okay? Divided in blocks that will tell you know what is running. When I saw it, what I found is that I was running trigger, workflow, trigger, workflow, trigger, workflow. That was actually a madness. And I was surprised because I had not that amount of triggers or workflows in the object the process was modifying. And this is because I was forgetting about this. This is how Salesforce run the execution order. And if you have a look, you see that after the triggers, you will be running the workflows. But if your workflows, process builders, or flows modify a field within your object, you're gonna be running again the trigger. And then you can be facing the situation of running again the trigger. And then you can be facing the situation again of be running the trigger. Okay. And that was the real issue. What we actually did was this. I don't want you to read the whole solution because it's pointless. I will summarize it that just because I'm a developer, I put all this code I put all these declarative solutions into a code, and so I was preventing the running of trigger because I was running just code. I will say that a different way of solving this could be to add a check into your triggers, so you ensure that your triggers will not be run twice within the same transaction. But there are multiple ways of solving this. Maybe if you are not a developer, you can do all the way around, get rid of the triggers and move all these changes or checks into process builders or flows. So this was my solution, but the problem here actually was that we because we didn't spend the necessary time architecting our application, we had, or my company had to spend a lot of time in analyzing an issue, creating a fix, in meeting with customer, and in teaching final user in teaching the final users how the application works now. And lastly, I want to talk about the record logging. In this time, what the customer was complaining about was about a job that was failing in the night, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the night. The error message was unable to log a row. And well, this was quite weird because was at a time, I don't know if you know this error message, but it's thrown when you are trying to modify a record that is that is already being modified by a different process or user. And the time, as I said before, was 3 or 4 in the morning, so no one else could be performing changes. And there was no other jobs modifying the same objects. I started having calls with customer, trying to find out why this. I also checked the code just to ensure that we were not running twice the same job and trying to modify twice at a time the same records, and start asking workmates. Then was when I found out the lookup skew, the account data skew, and the ownership skew. And from my view, this is the harder to prevent issue I'm talking about today. Lookup skew are produced when a very large number of records are associated to a single record in a lookup object. For example, imagine you have two types of objects. One has only 3 rows, A, B, and C, and the other one has 300,000 rows. Each 100,000 of rows is pointing to one of your rows. The second 100,000 rows is pointing with a lookup to the second row in this object, and the third 100,000 of rows is pointing to the third record here. Each time you perform a modification here or here, you are logging both records. If you are modifying here a record, the point is that you're logging this and all these styles, just to prevent that you can modify things in any of both object types that can impact the other. So to try to keep your data consistent. And this was what I was facing in this case. The customer had other jobs that ran at the same time but was modifying a different record. The point is, the record I was trying to modify was an object type B, and in the middle we had two lookups, and then there was the object modified or the records modified by the customer process. The fix here was as easy as just change the type of the jobs, but in case you cannot do that, you're gonna have a big problem. The point is, there are not only lookup skew. As you can see, there are also account data skew and ownership skew. The account data skew is, it's really similar to the lookup skew, but this produce between a Salesforce or a standard Salesforce object. In this case, or in this example, I'm showing up account and opportunities, but there are more, okay? You can find this in the Salesforce documentation. And it's pretty much the same. If you have an account that is holding 100,000 opportunities and you modify in this account, for example, you're gonna be locking all those opportunities. And this can produce problems. And the ownership skew is, well, in theory, is the same because it's produced when a single user is owning a large number of records, but what it will produce is performance problems in your org. There are ways of preventing this, and actually are just recommendation by Salesforce. The tips to avoid the data skew is to try to divide this skew. Okay. For example, in Mayin, we have an account called London's Calling that has over 10,000 possible speakers. Instead of having just one account with all those possible speakers, we can have 2-3 accounts called London's Calling 1, London's Calling 2, or London's Calling 3, and London's Calling 3, and split all those speakers between those accounts. For the avoiding of the ownership skew, well, this is most an invest of analysis, because there are tools or applications you can buy that will analyze how you own your records, or how your users own your records, and that will let you know how to prevent this. But basically what you can do is to create generic owners to, again, split your skew between different, in this case, owners. And for the preventing of the lookup skew, Salesforce is also giving some tips, okay? For example, you can reduce the record save time, so you will have to adapt your code to spend less time locking a record. You can distribute a skew, just like we explained in the account skew or in the ownership skew. You can use pick list, for example. In Main you have an account, and the lookup you have is another object called type. So account will be the parent in lookup relationship, and type will be the child. And in type, you have just 3 different objects: golden, silver, or gold, silver, and copper. Each gold, silver, and copper is pointing to over 10,000 or 10,000 records. Instead of having a lookup relationship, you can change your account object to have a pick list instead of a lookup, and then use the pick list instead of having this relationship. And lastly, reducing the load. Well, what you can do here is to, for example, in case you have a batch process, try to reduce the size for the chunks, okay? So the time you will be locking the records will be less. And finally, this is not a self recommendation, but it's something I have faced because when, for example, you are uploading to an org a large amount of records using the data loader, what you can do is to sort this data. So upload all the information related, for example, with an account. Then upload all the information and dependence objects related with a second account. In this way, you are most probably escaping from the most of the record locking issues you could face. You're gonna still facing, but are gonna be much less. And well, that was all. As I mentioned before, from my view, it's really important to have these 5 ideas in mind. Something that we used to forget is not only the order of execution, but it's also that we are working in an environment that there is more people creating processes. And another thing really important is to know your customer. Take your time, ask questions, go to meetings, understand why your customer needs this and why they work like this, okay? And try always to maintain your applications, investing in creating tools for maintenance. If you don't have time, maybe you can invest money in buying application for maintenance. And also try to learn the new things that Salesforce releases, because this is the only way to have your customers happy, and this will be the only way that do not lose credibility in front of your customers. Take your time and copy these links. These are some resources I have used for the building of this talk, and well, I hope you like it. As this is a virtual session, I'm afraid you cannot go for question and answer, but you can email me or go to Twitter. Sorry for this. My Twitter is pmolina81. Try to find me out and to send my question there. Thank you and have a good day.
Coacto are a Salesforce implementation company with over 18 years experience working with Salesforce. With our expertise in Salesforce, supply chain and ERP projects, we're here to support customers and partners in all stages of their implementation. We have a track record of success helping organizations to realize their Salesforce vision. Coact with us to make Salesforce work for you or your customers. Coacto, we realize your Salesforce vision.